All right, so I want to do in this video is kind of doing a little experiment. I'm going to be thinking out loud about this idea that came to me. I started reading Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media, and his very popular kind of one-liner that he came up with is, "The medium is the message." And as I was reading about and thinking about this idea of the medium is the message, it kind of hit me in a flash that it maps on nicely with Girard's idea of the triangular form of desire, mimetic desire. Now, I don't know if there is actually something there. There's sometimes something that happens when you read authors together, different books, different ideas, that their ideas will resonate, and sometimes that likeness of the ideas is more of wishful thinking. So this is an attempt to kind of think through the ideas of mimetic desire, the triangular nature of desire in Girard, and the idea of the medium is the message in McLuhan. And I'll attempt to quickly give a brief outline of what I understand both of those notions to be. All right, so from Girard's idea of mimetic desire, so the triangular notion of desire for Girard is the subject, the object, and the model. We can think of the subject as being the human being or collection of human beings, and the object being the thing in consideration of desire. Now, the idea from Girard is that human beings do not desire objects primarily because of the qualities of the object. Human beings desire objects, things, ideas, people, because of the model, because of the desire of the other. The model is the desire of the other. So we can think of this in sense of we desire Jordans, the shoes, not because of the inherent quality of the shoe, but because Michael Jordan is the model that we invest our desire in to impregnate the object, the shoe, with quality, with something worthwhile. Now it's kind of an extreme example. You can think of another example of let's say a teenager, as some girl interests a teenager and he doesn't reciprocate until one of his friends suggests that he desires this girl. So his desire, his friend's desire, becomes the model for his desire because of the process of mimetic desire. So as human beings, and Girard goes through this really completely anthropologically looking throughout history. This is kind of a central theme of human nature. It's subconscious or unconscious. It's not really brought to awareness that the things that we desire, the people that we desire, is because of this mediator, this model, this kind of go-between, which intensifies our desire for whatever it may be. Another example comes from Girard himself in a very similar kind of line of thinking. He had this girlfriend in college, I believe it was, and she was, they were getting more serious, and she was going to kind of up the relationship. She started talking about marriage. And immediately Girard, like many others, were turned off, where the desire for her was mitigated by her interests in him, and they broke it off. A few months went by, and his ex-girlfriend met another lover, and he said within himself he could feel his desire for her intensify and increase simply from due to the fact that someone else was desiring her. So this was before he even put any thought to this. He kind of recognized this innate mediation of desire by a model, by another. So again, just to kind of summarize, that human beings we do not desire things initially or primarily because of the qualities of the things that are inherent in the things that we desire. And again, the advertising and marketing industry has, extracted billions, if not trillions, from this idea this idea of mimetic desire. Right now, with regards to Marshall McLuhan and his notion of the medium is the message. So this idea that Marshall McLuhan put forth in the mid 20th century, he was really the father of media studies. He was the initial, if not the only person really looking at media and its effects on human consciousness in the mid 20th century. And he was thinking about these ideas in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s when the innovation of the television was really coming into the fold culturally. And what McLuhan does, he does a sort of genealogy of media and looks at how different media, and it's not just electronic media. He has a book called The Mechanical Bride, where he looks at how the automobile, the media of the automobile restructured the way that humans interact with each other, the way that cities and countries and states are laid out. I haven't read the book, but I've looked at some of the ideas, and it's really profound in a sense of how he kind of articulates the impact that this changeover from railway system to the automobile had on human consciousness and human relationships. So the idea. So then let's look at the media of language, of the written word, of the Gutenberg Revolution. The idea of putting words to the page and instantiating literacy had a profound effect on human consciousness. Let's move up towards radio. So the way that the radio changed the technological landscape in terms of media, and again shaped the way that human beings interact with each other. You can think of FDR's fireside chats and things of that nature, how it kind of changed the way that we interact with each other and in the way that we interact with the news, with our politicians, with corporations through advertising and marketing. And the new technology that was coming into the fold when Marshall was writing was the television, and the way that the television completely changed the way that families structured their homes and their families. You had this kind of central screen that people would gather around for hours at a time. And the big idea back then was television dumbing down, the people. So the concept and the notion of the medium as the message, it goes something like this. So the content of the media, so the television program, the radio program, the specific television program is less impactful. It's still important, but less impactful and important than the medium itself. So the advent of the television restructured, reformatted the way that human consciousness manifests and how human relationships, how human beings interact with each other. And the idea of the medium is the message, is that the message, which is the impact on human consciousness, is more profound than any kind of particular television show or whatnot. So if we fast forward now to the 21st century and we look at the internet and the advent of social media, so any particular Facebook page or YouTube video or tweet is less consequential than the reconfiguration of media as a whole, the decentralized notion. So what's in the foreground, what we see are tweets and, again, Facebook messages and posts and YouTube videos. But any specific video, post, or tweet is less impactful than the way in which the internet has restructured the way we interact again with each other and with our politicians. Look at the way that Trump tweets and the impact that that's had any specific tweet is less impactful than how he interacts with human beings and with the American population in this case. So again, the idea is that the medium recedes in the background. What we don't see when we're looking at a YouTube video on our phone, we don't really pay attention that we have an iPhone in our hand. And what is the iPhone made out of? It's made out of material. It's made out of components. It's how do we get a YouTube video into our iPhone? It's made through networks of servers. It's made through large multinational corporations. It's made through Silicon Valley and big tech. And again, the effects that has had on our society. It's made out of, again, in the background, you have networks of Wi-Fi and routers and these large corporations and companies that own this the bandwidth that we use. The large network of individuals that make YouTube videos. So there is this larger configuration of how the message is communicated that is more impactful than how specifically any particular message impacts the individual. All right, so now let's see how and if there's any interesting resonances between these two ideas of the Girardian triangular model of desire and the McLuhan notion of the medium as the message. And I made a little whiteboard here to kind of think through this and see how these ideas can kind of work off each other. So this first model here is Girard's model, right? So we have the subject in both cases. The subject is the human being or humanity. In Girard's model, we have the subject and the object, which is the object of desire. But the object's cause of desire, the reason and the intensity of the desire, is mediated by the model, which again can be thought of as the superstar in the advertising commercial, but it can also be the person at work that is our boss that we are trying to imitate in order to become, in order to move up in our job, right? So in Girard's model, in Girard's model, the idea of this mediator of desire, the model eventually becomes a rival because of this imitation and this mimetic process. The model eventually becomes a rival and then becomes an obstacle. So this notion of the mediator between the human being and the things, ideas, objects he or she desires is mediated by this model, which moves from through rivalrous machinations, through mimetic rivalry. Eventually the model becomes an obstacle, becomes a stumbling block, a scandalon. And eventually that leads to a breakdown of the relationship as a whole, right? So how can we use this idea to look at McLuhan's idea of the medium and the message, and let's see if there's any kind of correlation here. So the subject here again is human being or humanity, and instead of the object we have the message, which is the kind of the impact or the communication or the desire that's funneled back and that structures the relationship here. Both of these have a human relationship structuring kind of capacity. So the subject, the message is mediated again through the medium. So the medium would, let's say, look, let's do social media to make it contemporary, right? So let's see if there's an interesting correlation here. So the model eventually leads to a rivalrous scandalon. It eventually leads to a breakdown in the relationship. And we can think of it as a breakdown in the relationship between two people, or we can look at it as a breakdown in a relationship in a society. Same thing that happens here. So a new medium comes out, let's say it's the television or social media. At first, it's something that is new and novel and interesting, and it channels the desire, it channels the communication through this new medium, where the message is less impactful, but the medium, these are both mediators of these processes, right? So the medium, let's say social media, which when it came out was new and fresh and interesting, or the internet, right? The idea was that the internet was going to free human subjectivity and was going to kind of free us from the constraints of capitalism, when it was going to kind of allow a new landscape to that will break from the constraints of the older mediums. So what happens here? We have a breakdown in the structure because of this mimetic rivalry. Can we apply this here? So the medium, which was new and novel and interesting, eventually becomes problematic. It becomes an issue, because through this process, and I'm going to use kind of the central theme of Girard of mimetic rivalry, of this notion that human beings at their core are imitators, that they are mimetic. Eventually, this medium, whatever it is going to intensify this process of mimetic rivalry. And if we look at this in social media, we can see how the stages that we're at now, where we have young 12, 13, 14-year-old girls and boys with anxiety and with depression and committing suicide at alarming rates. You've seen a huge uptick. So you can see here how the medium has become an obstacle, right? So the message is less important than the medium. And so what does that mean? How can we think of these two notions here in terms of a path forward or an amelioration here? I'm going to do another video talking about that, because it's a whole nother notion, because both Girard and McLuhan were converts to Christianity. Now, these are both intellectual juggernauts, intellectual powerhouses, and both of them came to the conclusion that Christ is the answer. Christ is the solution. How is that? I think might be for another video, but I'm going to read a quick quote here from McLuhan. So McLuhan writes that in Jesus Christ, there is no separation between the medium and the message, right? There is no separation between the medium, in the medium and the message. So this collapses, right? So you have the subject and the message that aren't mediated by this medium that is infected with this rivalrous desire, with this mimetic desire that Girard works out beautifully in his oeuvre. To continue with the quote, McLuhan says, in Jesus Christ, there is no separation between the medium and the message. It is the one case where we can say that the medium and the message are fully one and the same. And then also, Girard claims that it is Christ who collapses this mimetic, rivalrous model into the kind of truth that appropriately mediates between subject and object, that appropriately, through the desire of Christ, through the imitation of Christ, is the only way to fix the relationship between two human beings, a collection of human beings, or a society as a whole. So I think that those kind of resonances between these two ideas, and again, this is the first time I'm thinking out loud about these ideas here, and I think there are a whole lot more implications and a lot more things to say about how these ideas can maybe kind of resonate with each other, and the way that the ideas of Christ, of the truth, of the way, can become the ultimate mediator. How can we appropriate the ideas and the kind of authentic imitation of Christ and his teaching and his philosophy to short circuit the stranglehold that this all-pervasive media, social media, the internet, how all this has a stranglehold on our human relations? How can we use the idea of Christ to collapse the medium and essentially reintroduce human beings to themselves? So I hope you like this. If you guys have any comments or questions or concerns, please let me know. And depending on your responses, we'll see if I can do some more videos thinking through some more implications here. So thanks for listening.